All right, here we go again for the second video today. The second video, I'm going to be talking about three of the questions about empathy that I posted on Blackboard last week for the reading on author empathy. The fifth question reads, and I need to put my glasses on, reads, what are three things that Keene says characterize author empathy in relation to the characters they create? Keene does not give a list, as in a 1, 2, 3 list. She doesn't do it in the text, and she definitely doesn't create a list that you can actually see as a list. But she does say a number of different things, and so what I want you to do is to pick out three things in that reading, three statements that she makes about authors in relation to empathy. And I can just give you one to sort of get you started on that list. One of the things she says that's quite interesting is that authors feel empathy with the characters they create. And because they create the characters with a feeling of empathy, in the sense that they understand their characters, they understand why they act the way they do, and they often feel sympathy toward their characters, they transmit that to their readers so that we also feel sympathetic towards characters. We feel empathy with characters. And so that's one of the main things that she says. But she also says a number of other things in relation, says a number of things about the relationship between authors and the characters that they create in relation to empathy. And so I wanted you to read that and try and sort of recreate what does she say. So that's number 5. Then question number 7, what is the purpose of the writer's empathetic cues in the story? What are some of the empathetic cues in relation to two characters in the biographer's tale or the God of Small Things? Okay. In order to understand, or in order to answer that question, you have to understand what an empathetic cue is. A cue is a hint, a signpost, really, that tells you you should pay attention to this, kind of thing. But of course, authors do it in more subtle ways. And if it's an empathetic cue, it's a cue or a sign. It is something that has been said or done or read into, or said or done or invested in the character by the author, that is meant to trigger empathy within us. So cues are like triggers, or are meant to act like triggers. And so if we take, for example, I'm not going to use the biographer's tale or the God of Small Things as the example here, because I want you to be giving me examples from them. So I'll choose another one of the novels that we've read. If we take a look at Scout in To Kill a Mockingbird, that in that novel, what is it that, what are the types of things that the author does that makes us actually know before the children realize it that Boo Radley is probably not such a scary guy? So a lot of the clues or hints are given that the children miss and that we as readers actually see, and so we realize that. And when it comes to Scout herself, what is it? How does the author create her? Well, she's created as a tomboy, as someone who is also very admiring of her father. There are different ways that the reader can sort of identify with her, or see similarities between themselves and her, or recognize in her someone that they like. And so in that way, she triggers empathy within us as readers. And so you can point to specific instances in the novel, and that's always a good idea. So with Scout, for example, it's good to point to specific instances. When we realize that Boo Radley is hiding gifts in the tree for the children, that is something that heightens our willingness to like him and to be kindly disposed to him, as one concrete example, and you could take several others. So that's empathetic cues. And in the biographer's tale, there are several, we're meant to feel empathy with several of the characters, but you can then choose which one you want to look at and explain why. What is it that triggers your empathy as a reader for them, and do you think that that would also trigger empathy for other readers? And so it's a good idea to take a look at that. All right. If we then take a look at question number 8, what is the relationship between readers' empathetic distress and complicity? Does this occur for you in any of the novels that we have read? First off, in order to answer this question, you have to understand what empathetic distress is. And Keene does explain empathetic distress, so read that carefully, and you'll I think come up with the explanation for that. But I will explain it again here. And empathetic distress is when we feel empathy, but we would rather not feel empathy because we don't feel like we should be feeling empathy for that person. For example, I'm not comfortable really when my empathy is triggered for rapists. I don't really want to feel empathy with rapists. I think it's a deplorable crime, deplorable behavior, and I definitely think that they should be not so much punished for it, as in they should not be allowed to do it, and if that means they have to be incarcerated or put in prison so that they cannot do it, then I think that is a good idea. That's a personal preference that I have, and one that I share with many, many people. And so even with the legal system. But authors can create characters that are negative characters, bad characters, sociopaths, murderers, and we can still feel empathy with them. And this is what Keene talks about. Is this a good idea or is it a bad idea? She sort of talks about the ethics of that and how it's possible to look at the ethics of that. And in relation to that, she says that as we read these stories, we can become or feel complicit. There is a novel that we teach here at Halmstad University called Lolita, written by Vladimir Nabokov, and it is about it is written from the first person perspective by a pedophile called Humpert Humpert. And Dolores Hayes is a young girl. She's 12 when the novel starts, and he imagines that she is seducing him. He imagines that she sexually desires him. And the novel is written in such a way, because he doesn't even refer to her by her real name. He gives her a new name. He calls her Lolita. And the way the novel is written, it is very easy to forget how old she is and to sort of be drawn into his delusions and about her desire for him. And so it's a great novel to talk about how storytelling can actually manipulate our feelings and manipulate our perspective. But Vladimir Nabokov has also written into this voice the implied narrator, the implied author, that we can actually see that there's also a critique of this perspective. There's some self-awareness, there's shame, there's all sorts of things going on. So it's a very interesting novel to look at from the perspective of both how we become complicit in viewing this girl as older than she actually is, but also how we can sort of deconstruct this voice and see that it is actually that there's actually some awareness that what he's doing is actually very wrong and that he shouldn't be doing this. All right. That sort of gives you an idea of complicity, what it means, I hope. If not, you always use a dictionary, and that should help you as well. So my question here was, does this occur for you in any of the novels that we have read? Are there negative characters that you find yourself feeling empathy towards, and how do you feel about feeling empathy towards them? Is that a good thing or a bad thing? it doesn't have to be always a bad thing, but I think it is important to be aware of it and to be aware of what is it that is causing the empathy, and how do we balance that against the negative character traits or the negative actions that they commit. All right, that's it.